In 2003, the car known as the Bentley Speed 8 raced at the iconic 24 Hours of Le Mans. And during the event, this car led from start to finish, dominating the French Classic in 2003. But after Le Mans, in a blink of an eye, this car was gone from the endurance racing world and never returned. And besides the fact that this variant that won Le Mans only raced at the event once, what if I told you it was heavily inspired by an Audi prototype? More on that in a moment. But in this video, I'll be collaborating with endurance racing content creator MoraGP, as we dive into the fascinating details of the Bentley Speed 8, which won Le Mans overall, but never raced again. Now, before talking about the Speed 8 itself, it's imperative that we mention that when Bentley won in 2003, it wasn't their first trip, nor their first win at Le Mans overall. You see, out of all the car manufacturers across the world, Bentley was the first brand to win the 24 Hours of Le Mans that still exists today. Their first win was in 1924 when the Bentley 3-liter Sport took victory. This was also the second ever race of the 24 Hours of Le Mans, the first of course coming the previous year in 1923. In terms of results, Bentley dominated Le Mans from the years of 1927 till 1930. 3 different types of cars took victory between this period. The most successful of them was the Bentley Speed 6, which took victory in 1929 and 1930. In fact, in 1930, the top 2 spots were claimed by the Bentley Speed 6 entries. The nearest car that wasn't a Speed 6 was a Talbot 90, which was 11 laps down. But even though Bentley endured through Le Mans, coming away with a successful 5 overall victories, that 1930 race would ultimately be the British manufacturer's last overall win at Le Mans. Well, of course, until the Speed 8 came along. But now that we know about Bentley's history at Le Mans, let me hand things over to Mora, who will talk about the foundations of where the Speed 8 came from.
To understand Bentley's return to Le Mans, we have to go back to 1998. Audi were eager to join endurance racing after seeing the Volkswagen brother, Porsche, take its 15th win at Le Mans, and so it was decided at the start of the year that Audi would develop a prototype to race at La Sarthe. The plan was to develop only a car built around the LMP regulations called the R8R. However, after the 1998 24 Hours of Le Mans, due to the domination from the GT1 cars and their evolution, if you want to call it like that, into prototypes rather than cars based off production models, the ACO decided that it was time for a change. Starting from 1999, the GT1 class would be replaced into the so-called GTS class, while to allow the GT1 brands to compete and keep developing their sports cars, they created the LMGTP class. The class was built as a closed cockpit regulation which, in a way, set the GT1 manufacturers free from the need of their cars to be based off production models. It was at that stage when Audi decided that a 2-car program would be a good approach to decide which of the 2 regulations had more potential, and thus the R8C project was born. Firstly, let's talk about the LMP car, the R8R. It was developed mainly by Dallara and it featured a 3.6 twin-turbo V8. While it had a concept that looked somewhat similar to the Ferrari 333 SP, it was visible that it was a kind of rushed concept. Meanwhile, the R8C was really rushed. Developed by Racing Technology Norfolk, it used the same engine as the sister R8R, but the concept was the complete opposite. Using a closed cockpit thanks to the inspiration of the GT1 cars, you could see how it wasn't fully finished due to the lack of aerodynamic winglets. After a lot of testing done for the R8R, while not so much for the R8C, the cars finally hit the track in the 1999 24 Hours of Le Mans. The R8R had a decent qualifying with their cars being 9th and 11th on the grid, while the R8C struggled in 20th and 23rd. Once the race started, the R8Rs kept climbing spots, but that wasn't the case for the R8C, which suffered gearbox trouble in both cars, ending their races prematurely. The R8Rs ended up finishing 3rd and 4th overall, making it clear what concept Audi was going to use in the future. This was going to put an end to the R8C story, but a brand came knocking on the door.
This is where we insert Bentley, who were interested in a motorsport return. And with Audi choosing the R8R concept in favor of the R8C, this opened the door for Bentley to enter the picture. Even though the Audi R8C program had been called off, the facility in which the car had been produced from, Racing Technology Norfolk, still had the ability to continue a Le Mans prototype project. And with Bentley interested in a motorsport return, this was a perfect way to continue the project and for Bentley to reclaim the Le Mans crown. And if you're wondering how Bentley was able to get involved in this, well, that's simply because Audi and Bentley are both owned by the same parent company, which is Volkswagen. The first iteration of Bentley's prototype would be called the EXP Speed 8, which was the variant before the Speed 8. This Bentley would be designed by Peter Elleray, who also designed the Audi R8C. This car actually shared a lot of technology with the R8C. It very much resembles the prototype race car. The EXP Speed 8 would be using the same engine used in the Audi R8 race car, a 3.6-liter V8. However, the gearbox on the Bentley was different to the one on the Audi R8. The EXP Speed 8 would use a custom-developed 6-speed sequential manual transmission from X-Track. As for the chassis, that would be a carbon fiber and aluminium monocoque. Bentley was looking to run a 3-year program starting off in 2001 with the EXP Speed 8 in endurance racing, not just to take overall victory at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, but also to promote the all-new Bentley Continental GT. As for the team running the operations of the Bentley EXP Speed 8, later known as the Speed 8, that would be the formerly known Audi Sport UK, also known as Apex Motorsport. But when the cars would compete in motorsport, the organization would be under the name Team Bentley. And so with the preparations now complete, Bentley was ready to debut the car in 2001.
Their debut finally came alive in 2001. The program was simple. They would only race at Le Mans from 2001 to 2003 and no more, showing how their focus was simply to conquer Le South once again. The team's 6 drivers in 2001 were Martin Brundle, Stefan Ortelli and Guy Smith in the number 7, and Andy Wallace, Butch Leitzanger and Eric van der Poel in the number 8. Now, it must be said first that while there were a lot of prototype classes back then, Bentley was the only car to feature in the LMGTP category. On qualifying, they finished 7th and 9th, being 4 seconds behind the pole sitter Audi R8. It would be on the race when the Bentley started to shine though. While the number 7 was unlucky as it had to retire after 56 laps due to a gearbox issue, the number 8 had great pace. While it did find some issues in the race, it ended up taking 3rd place overall, and their fastest lap was just 2 seconds behind the R8's best lap, showing that indeed there was potential. After the race, they decided that the car needed some updates, so they started to get some work done on it. It would directly influence their 2002 effort, however. For that year's 24 Hours of Le Mans, Bentley weren't fully ready, so they had to change their plans. They would enter a so-called mule car, the number 8, which will have some of the updates, but not all of them. Their biggest updates were a new engine, which was an Audi 4.0 litre V8 twin turbo and a brand new gearbox, but this only caused one issue. Only one car could be entered, so that meant less mileage for them. Driving the number 8 were the same 3 drivers as last year, Wallace, Van der Poel and Leitzinger. In qualifying, the starting position turned out to be worse as they were before, 11th overall, but they had managed to improve last year's lap by over a second and a half. On the race, this time the Bentley went again best of the rest, being the best car only behind the Audi R8. The motivation was high, but something very big was coming.
2003 was a completely different year for Team Bentley, mainly because of the fact that this year would mark the debut of the new variation of the car, and they would secure major success at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The inner workings of this new 2003 model would start as early as 2001, and there were definitely some changes made compared to the predecessor. Alongside the addition of the 4.0-liter V8 engine, which would increase the power of the car, some of the improvements added on to the Bentley included tweaking the aerodynamics, changing some of the bodywork, and upgrading the cockpit, to name a few. This variation of the Bentley prototype did a lot of testing, and it was clear that not just the pace had improved, but the reliability as well, and that is crucial in a race with such magnitude as the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The redesign also meant that the car would receive a name change. Bentley would get rid of the EXP and just call the car the Speed 8. Of course, the ultimate result was that the new iteration of the Speed 8 would finally return Bentley to the top step of the Le Mans podium. And of course, if they did so, this would be huge, not just for the Bentley name, but also marketing-wise, as Bentley and Volkswagen were releasing the all-new 2003 Bentley Continental GT. The 2003 year of competition for the Bentley Speed 8s would also see the assistance of Jost Racing. Jost was the same team that helped out Audi to achieve overall victory at Le Mans from 2000 to 2002. And with Audi temporarily backing aside from a factory Le Mans effort, this placed Jost Racing in a position to help Team Bentley achieve overall victory at Le Mans. Team Bentley also had a few famous names, some that raced with Audi and Team Jost, competing in the Bentley Speed 8s in 2003. In just a moment, Maura will talk more about some of those drivers that raced. But as the 2003 season approached, believe it or not, even though Le Mans was the target for Bentley, it wouldn't be the first race for the redesigned Speed 8s.
With the introduction of the Jost Racing-backed Bentley Speed 8, the program suffered another change. Firstly, 2 Bentleys will be entered for the 2003 12 Hours of Sebring as a test before Le Mans, but that wasn't the only one. Bentley had also changed their driver lineups thanks to the involvement of Jost, so we now had very different drivers. In the number 7 car were Guy Smith, Rinaldo Capello, and Mr. Le Mans himself, Tom Christensen. Meanwhile, in the number 8 car, it was Johnny Herbert, David Brabham and Mark Blundell driving. The race in Florida was expected to go well, but it ended up being quite the warning for the Audi R8s. The number 8 Bentley took pole position ahead of the sister number 7 car, both dropping 7/10 to the nearest Audi R8 in 3rd. However, a technical infringement from both cars saw their quali laps being deleted and starting from the very back of the field. Making their way up the order, the Bentleys couldn't match the Audi R8's race pace, but they were way closer than before. They ended up finishing a great 3rd overall, 3 laps behind the 2 first Audis, and the number 7 Bentley set the fastest lap of the race, letting the Audis know that they weren't here to play. All the data gathered, the driver's experience, and the overall sensations from the team were crucial towards Le Mans, and it ended up being very useful.
So it finally came time for the big race, the 2003 edition of the 24 Hours of Le Mans. As we saw at the 12 Hours of Sebring, the Speed 8s were competitive, but were not able to beat Audi to victory. But at Le Mans, however, things would be very different. Like Sebring, Team Bentley would bring 2 cars, badged as the number 7 and number 8 entries. They would also have the same driver lineup that was at Sebring. In qualifying, Bentley would dominate over the field. The number 7 car would qualify on pole, thanks to then 4-time Le Mans winner Tom Christensen. The Danish driver would set a 3-minute 33.1 in the second day of qualifying, which would ultimately be around 3 seconds faster than the nearest Audi, the number 10 car. At the start of the race, the 2 Bentleys had maintained 1st and 2nd position overall, and by the time they got to the Mulsanne straight, they had already gapped the LMP 900 entries. During this 2003 event, Team Bentley, with help from Jost Racing, proved that the Speed 8s were not just fast, but they were lightning fast against the Audi R8s. The majority of this race was led by the number 7 Bentley, and it had very strong pace in the hands of drivers Tom Christensen, Guy Smith, and Rinaldo Capello. The sister Bentley, the number 8 car, maintained 2nd position, but wasn't on the same pace compared to the number 7 car. The number 8 car also encountered an issue when it went into the pit lane for a battery replacement, which meant that it lost a lot of time to the sister car. But nevertheless, Team Bentley would finish Le Mans with a fantastic result. The 2 Bentley Speed 8s would cross the line in 1st and 2nd position, not just in the LMGTP category, but overall at Le Mans. This meant that after 73 years of waiting, Bentley had finally returned to the top step of the Le Mans podium. Christensen, Smith, and Capello would take overall victory in the number 7 car, lifting that iconic trophy up in the air for Bentley to achieve their 6th win at the famous Circuit de la Sarthe.
After 2003, just like they had promised, Bentley would put an end to their program after winning that year's 24 Hours of Le Mans. Bentley ended up being absent from racing for quite a while until their big return in 2014 with a GT3 car. They ended up having quite a successful GT campaign from 2014 until 2020. They won the 2015 Blank Paint GT Sprint Series and many more races on the way, the most notable one being the 2020 12 Hours of Bathurst. The British brand was also very close to going back to prototype racing in 2016, when an opportunity to build a Daytona Prototype International came. They did some testing and really looked into it, but at the end Bentley decided that it wasn't the right time and simply called it off. As of 2024, Bentley isn't really doing anything apart from a sole Bentley entry in the 24 Hours of Dubai, where they were far off the current GT3s.
So, that was the story of the Bentley Speed 8, which won the 24 Hours of Le Mans overall in 2003, but never returned. Also, big thank you to Mora for collaborating to make this video possible. I've put a link to his channel down in the description. But what do you think about the Bentley Speed 8 and its success at the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 2003? Well, let me know all your thoughts down in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already, I suggest subscribing. The reason why is because I make endurance racing content mainly on WEC and IMSA every week. And if you want to watch more videos, there's options on your screen. But for now, that's it from me. I'll see you in the next one.